Chaver, was macht ihr? How are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich. Begashmis v'ruchnis. Hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. All our hearts and minds are in Eretz Yisrael, with our brothers, our sisters, our children, our family, that are facing a threat and in the middle of a war. We'll start as usual with the tefillah. And this represents kipshute, literally. Shiramaylois mimamakim kursicho adonoi. We're calling out to Hashem from the depths, from the tunnels, wherever there's a yid who's in the abyss, in whatever situation he finds himself, and he thinks that he's mimamakim, he's in a situation that's down, deep, and he's calling from Hashem to be saved. That's one way we can learn Pshat. This week's parasha is Parashas Chayei, and as usual, the lessons that we learn from the Parasha Shavua, as the Alter Rebbe said, we have to live with the times, and we could see the connections in an obvious manner between the Parasha Shavua and the events that are currently unfolding. So, today primarily I'm going to speak a Sikha the Rebbe in Chilik Tezvav, which is a long Sikha, very comprehensive Sikha, which discusses the role of the Jewish nation and history. But we're just going to speak one point of that Sikha, and other things that we're going to speak about we spoke at other times. And that is, in general, I don't know if I ever spoke about this, I feel that the Rebbe was the one who invented, I believe, a certain category of Torah which no other gadol addressed, which that itself is amazing. Besides for the infinity of the Rebbe's Torah, Rambam Sichas, Rashi Sichas, Siyumim on Shas, and the Chassidus, and Maimorim, and Biyuri HaZoyar. There's so much Torah of the Rebbe, mamish infinite. But there's one thing, one could consider it the most simplistic thing, and it's something which everyone could relate to, and that is the name of the Parsha. It's an amazing idea. I don't think any other gadol before the Rebbe, not a baki in every single rabbi or scholar or svarim, but as far as I recall, I don't ever hear about anybody who speaks about the name of the Parsha, like the Rebbe speaks about the name of the Parsha. So, there's two Parshas, which the same question comes up. One Parsha is this week's Parsha, Vayu Chayei Sarah. This is the life of Sarah. And when does the Parsha start? It starts after Sarah passes away. And the Parsha is called Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, when it actually starts right after Sarah lived. The same question the Rebbe asks in Parshas Vayechi Yaakov, and it talks about after Yaakov is going to, as Yaakov passes away and is buried, etc. So over there in Parshas Vayechi is the same question. This Parsha is called Vayechi Yaakov. This is the true life of Yaakov, the years that he spent in Egypt. You'd think he had better years elsewhere. That's the question that everybody asks over there in Parsha Vayechi. It's a well-known question. The same sort of question is asked over here in Parshas Chayei. Everything that speaks about in the Parsha, first of all, the fact that she's buried in the Moras HaMachpelah, so the discussion is about the burial of Sarah. And then it speaks about a shidduch between Yitzchak and Rivka supplants Sarah. She moves into the same tent. And then finally Avram remarries. So there's a replacement. Instead of Sarah, he remarries Keturah. So what's going on here? Why is this Parsha called Chayei Sarah? So the Rebbe speaks about all these three major events in the Parsha. The first part is the buying of the Moras HaMachpelah, her burial. The second is the shidduch between Yitzchak and Rivka. And the third is the fact that Avram remarries. So I'm not going to speak about the third issue at all. See there? I'm going to speak primarily about the first one, but slightly on the second. So first we'll talk about a concept, which the Rebbe doesn't elaborate over there so much, but we have to get into it because everything has to be explained. But the truth is, on the other hand, you can't explain everything from the beginning, every single place. But anyways, I heard a good word, an expression today. In Tachrichim is nicht da kein Keshenes. In burial shrouds don't have pockets. So what's the saying in Tachrichim Nishdokin Keshenis? That means you can't take it with you. There's no pockets in burial shrouds because you don't take anything with you. That's it. There's a certain finality. Now there's a new stage, and that's it. Everything that was going on in the past, in a certain sense, is over. You know, they say death is final. There's such an expression in English. So there's truth to that, and actually there's the Mishnah that says that b'shas p'tiras shalodam leiv malavim le'avonim tevis u'magolius, nothing of your physical possessions go with you, and that's what it means in Tachrichim in the Dokin Keshenis. But the truth is, the Jewish view is that that's not what life is about in general, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Igeres HaKodesh Chav Zayin Chav Ches, Chayei Atzadik Einam Chayim Sorim. What's the idea of the life of a tzaddik? The life of a tzaddik is true life, and what's true life? True life is his spirituality. And that lives on. But not only lives on, because what's the idea of life? Life means eternity. That's true life. As Chassidus also explains in the famous concept of Mayim Chayim, there's a certain Mayim which is considered living waters which are used for Mechatos, and we say that it has to be waters that keep on flowing constantly. But Naharas HaMachazvin, a river that dries up once in 7 years, is called Naharas HaMachazvin, rivers that dry up. False. Chazvin means the false. So the question is, why are they false? Until 7 years, they're not false. They're here. They're now. What's wrong with it? Why are they called false rivers? And the answer is, only something which will forever be alive is truly alive. Alive. Connecting to the Eibishter is true life. And v'atem mechayes kulam, v'atem advekem b'Hashem Elokeichem, chayim kulchem hayim. The Eibishter is the Mokar HaChayim, and only that which is attached to the Eibishter is eternal life. Interestingly, on a side point, I once saw a letter from the Rebbe who sends to a family, and I don't know exactly what was going on over there in the family, but it seems like their lifestyle, the children, they didn't really follow in the ways of the parents or father or mother, I'm not sure. I remember the key line over there was that it was a question about what to write on the tombstone. And the Rebbe said, don't forget, the main thing is the Lebedik Matseva. What's the main thing? The live tombstone. What does it mean, the live tombstone? A person comes to where a person is buried, and they read about him. And on the tombstone it says, he was a holy man. He was a great man. Thank you very much. But there it ends. Chas v'shalom. Oh, but the Lebedik Matseva, in other words, what's the real testimony? Who's a real witness? Who really shows that this person still continues on? The children. That's called a Lebedik Matseva, a live tombstone. Because this means that the person continues living. Live means the children are alive. But that's the real tombstone. That's the real testimony. That's the real advertisement. That's the real reflection of who the parents were. If the child continues with the ideals and the virtues and the values of the parents. And that's why we also say, concerning Yaakov Avinu, the famous line, Ma'azali b'chaim afu b'chaim. Since his children are alive, so too he's alive. But what's the whole point when we say Ma'azali b'chaim afu b'chaim? It doesn't mean to say that he's still alive spiritually because his legacy continues. That's not the word. The word is Ma'azali b'chaim. Since his influence and his impact is felt continuously after he passed away, that means he's alive on planet Earth. Not that he's alive in Gan Eden. If he's alive in Gan Eden, who cares what's going on? Ma'azali b'chaim, that his children are b'chaim. Spirituality lives on forever. Tzaddikim di'ispater, ishtaker b'chulal me'yoter me'chayei. Tzaddikim who pass on are even more alive than they were alive, because now they're not limited to the body. Fine. That's one idea. And that's true by all tzaddikim, and that's what it means, that the life of a tzaddik is not connected to his body, but to his ideals and virtues. But the real thing to keep the tzaddik alive, not only in Gan Eden, in heaven and paradise, but on this planet Earth, is when he has disciples, when he has children, when they continue in his ways. So that's a vort. That's important to know, that the measure of life, number one, starts with spirituality, eternity, true eternity, and that we see it in an evident manner, in a physical way, on this planet Earth. And concerning the wicked people, by the way, it says, Rishoyim b'cham yeyem kriyim mesim. The wicked, even whilst they're alive, are not considered alive. Okay. And by the way, we could add another point, that this is really the true expression, whether the person's alive or not, if we measure the impact that they have afterwards. In other words, it's a challenge. The person's not here anymore. One could argue and say, when did the person have an impact? When did the person have an influence? As long as they were here. But once they leave, their impact wanes and dissipates. So we say, no. The real impact, the real measure of his life is if he continues living on. His impact is forever on planet Earth. And that's what it means he's still living. So that's another level, not only in general, not only is the tzaddik after he passes on still alive, but the main thing is how he continues living on through his children, through his disciples, through his students, by them living a life where they're reflecting the values and the virtues, and they mention the teacher, and they say out the impact and the influence of the teacher. Okay. And by the way, this is also the understanding, I don't know if I once mentioned this, I once learned in a Maimer, where we say, we say all those that are alive should bless Hashem and give gratitude, thanks to Hashem. And that's the bracha in Shmoneh Esrei, we say, you are worthy of praising. So the Rosh Tevis, we say from here, we learn out, the Rosh Tevis, Ches, Choyle, Yud, Yam, Yud, Yisurin, and Midbar. Those are the four cases where a person has to bench goimel that he's alive. If he was very sick, if he traveled overseas, over the sea, and if you were in the desert, or you were in jail. So there are four cases where you have to give a blessing. HaGoimel Chayom Tevis. So why is it say V'chol HaChaim? Why isn't the word of Chaim? So the Rebbe wants to explain in a Maimer, because what's the true Chaim? When there's a threat to the Chaim. You were in a situation where Mimamakim, Minametzar, and you got out of that, it needed a special power. The person who survived something which was a threat in his life comes out stronger. He needed a greater burst of energy and force and life to be able to survive that. And now he's living greater, better, etc. Same thing's over here. When do you say the person's really alive? You know, like they say the expression in English, the right side of history, the wrong side of history. You really want to know how much a person is really alive. See what happens when he passes away, that he's still alive. We see the impact that he's having in the physical world, even though it could be years that he passed the line, he's still alive. Okay, now we come to Sarah in particular. This is more what the Rebbe speaks about in the Sikha. Last week, I spoke about the 9th test. And the 9th test was that Avram had to banish, exile Yishmael from the house, and it was very difficult, and we spoke about it last week. It's interesting to note that many commentators talk about the test. The 10th test is considered Avram buying the Me'oras HaMachpelah. Rabbeinu Yoina brings it down, and other commentators too. Most people learn that the 10th test is the Akedah, but this in itself, that some Mefarshim bring out that the 10th test is the story in this week's parasha, shows you how monumental it is, how epic it is in the life of Avram, and how difficult it was, and how this comes as a continuation of what we spoke last week about how Sarah impacts Avram, that he should kick Yishmael out of the house. See last week's talk, and this week is a continuation. What's the difference between Avram and Sarah? Last week we spoke about Avram as Chesed the Kedusha, in contrast to Yishmael's Chesed the Klippah, that from Chesed the Klippa, I don't know if I said this last week, could be chaos. Chesed the Klippa comes from the world of Toyu, according to Kabbalah. Now, there's another point over here. Avram is Chesed. But Avram was Av Hamoin Goyim, a father to a multitude of nations. He's also the father of Yishmael. And that's what made it difficult for him to banish Yishmael. And he even said, Lu Yishmael Yichel Lefanecha. He even thought that Yishmael might be the one that could inherit. Sarah, as we saw from last week's parasha, recognized the threat of Yishmael, that he had the arrows pointed at Yitzchak, and that he committed idolatry. But in addition to that, there was a major point that I didn't discuss last week, is that Yishmael was already having issues with inheritance, that he's going to be the successor, he's older, he's going to one who's going to continue and be the true Yoresh of Avram Avinu. And Sarah was having none of it. Sarah understood that it had to be the Jew, Yitzchak, who's going to continue the movement and spreading Elikus. In other words, from the way of Avram, Chesed of Kedusha could evolve Chesed the Klippa. And that's how Chassidus explains the Lashon. Avram Yotza Mimena Yishmael. From an Avram could eventually Yotza, it's called Yinika L'Chitzonim, down the line could evolve something which would become a twisted, perverted, warped form of Chesed. Therefore, we need a Sarah. Sarah represents more the idea of discernment, more the idea of discretion, more the idea of Gvura, if you will, which says, it's very nice Chesed, and we do employ Chesed, but sometimes we have to have borders, sometimes we have to have boundaries. This week I heard a mighty kavod from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, that he's chazed from the Rebbe, that the Rebbe asked about Beis Shammai, where it says that convert came to Beis Shammai and asked him to teach Kol Kula, and Beis Shammai rebuffed him and said, I can't help you, that idea. And the question is, but isn't that the opposite of Avos Yisrael? How could a Beis Shammai do that? And the point of the answer was that the message that Beis Shammai was giving to him was that you should realize there is a no in Judaism. In other words, a shlila. There's negating. Sometimes you have to exercise self-discipline. Gvura. That's what Beis Shammai was telling this person. After he hears that, then we'll be able to teach you more. So I'm saying, this is the point over here. There's a couple of sayings in English that bring out this point. The road to everywhere leads to nowhere. You have to have a plan. This plan means, they say, every definition, by definition, excludes that which is outside the definition. So what's your plan? You want to have a Hasidic shtub? You want to have a Hasidic home? Define what means a Hasidic home. A Hasidic home means that we don't have secular influences. So we're saying we're getting rid of certain secular influences. Anoichi v'lo yilecha. That's what Judaism is. Every definition define what are your values, what are your virtues. Every definition, by definition, excludes that which is outside the definition. And the same thing as they say, stand for something or die for nothing, etc., etc. From Avram Avinu, because he's chesed and generosity unlimited to a certain extent, even though it's chesed the kedusha, not chesed the klippa, and we can't get into that right now, but nevertheless, because it's primarily chesed, Avram is the symbol of Av Hamoin Goyim, the father of the multitude of nations, and he is Abraham Accords. Sarah is the mother of Yitzchak, the one who's the first one, as we say by a bris, when we bless Hashem, Asher Kiddush Yidid Mi Beten. Yitzchak is the first Jew that's born after Avram is circumcised. So he's really the first born Jew. You understand? So therefore, Sarah, who's the mother of Yitzchak, understands that even though we are Av Hamoin Goyim, we have to be the teachers of the nations, but in order to keep the integrity and the standard of being truly the teachers of mankind, therefore sometimes we have to discern and practice discretion and say certain things are out. And this Sarah accomplished by the Moras HaMachpelah. What is Chayei Sarah? What clinched the deal? That she caused Avram, after Sarah passed away, to buy the first land, the first plot of land in Eretz Yisrael that belongs to the Jews. Which plot of land is this? Listen to the significance. Who was in the Maris HaMachpelah? Adam and Chava, the mother and father of mankind. So even though Eretz Yisrael was already promised to Avram, and in the first Rashi of the Torah, it already says that that's why the Torah starts with Bereshit bara Elikim, because Hashem owns the land. And therefore, Koyach Ma'asav Higel Amoi, he's going to give the land to the Yidden, Eretz Yisrael, because it belongs to Hashem, and he promised it already to Avram in Parshas Lech Lecha. But at that point in time, here's Avram, landless, homeless, and he comes over here, and what's he about to do? He's about to take a plot of land which represents the source of mankind, something which is associated with humankind, something which belongs to everybody, because someone could say Adam and Eve is the mother and father of all of mankind, and we say no, Eretz Yisrael belongs to Yidden. And therefore, Abraham has to buy it, and Sarah is buried there because that's what she signified. Through Avram buying it, but actually through Sarah being buried there, that's when it actually becomes ours. And like Rashi says, that Vayokom stay Ephraim, and Rashi says, Tkuma, Hoyseloi, Shiyotzim Yad Hedyet Liad Melech. In other words, what does it mean, Tkuma? The land ascended. It was a land that before, in potential, belonged to the Jews, obviously, because Hashem promised it to Avram Avinu already, but nevertheless, right now it was like choil, it was mundane in its revealed state. By Avram buying it and acquiring it and purchasing it, it went out. It graduated from hedyet to mundane, commoner, to melech, to royalty. And this is the idea over here. I don't want to get into it now. It's a tough subject to discuss with the world, and especially now we're going through the morality of the world, and the world is raging about Gaza. We have to know that we brought morality to the world, and we are the ones who have to teach morality to the world. Just to get to the crux of the issue, I don't know if I ever spoke about it before, and I'm not going to do justice to the subject, but I believe that what the world doesn't get, in the words of Kabbalah, is that the only way we're going to really bring peace into the world is the yichud of Mamala Kalamim and Seva Kalamim, which you call universalism and tribalism at the same time. And it's not a contradiction. You see, in the world, they look at it that we can't compute how both of these things could be happening at the same time. Either we say we shouldn't speak about nationalistic feelings because that's connected to bigotry and to arrogance and to racism. That's one attitude. So therefore, if people that look this way, they'll say religion is the problem. I don't want to get into it now. I'm a teacher of Chassidus. I'm not a political scientist. Then there's the other side of the coin that says, no, we have to stick to who we are. We can't assimilate. And we don't mingle with the rest of society, which is all very good and very true, as long as you respect the other person. The problem is we don't have a good role model without the Torah of a person on one hand has huge, powerful, healthy nationalistic, we'll call it nationalistic feelings. Goyin Yankov, that you're proud that you're a Jew. Ashenu matechokenu manoim garaleinu. Ato v'chartonu mikolo amim. But at the same time, it's full of humility. If I know I'm a teacher, if I know I'm a mentor, if I was given leadership qualities, that means I'm even more humble because I'm living, that I'm charged with a mission, with a duty. And the Rebbe used to speak about this the whole time, that being a Jew is a chayv and it's a schus. Equally balanced, we feel the merit that we're Jews, but at the same time, the chayv. And this is the message from Sarah. And this is the message of the Maris HaMachpelah. And getting back to why this was a test According to the Mefarshim, we learned that this was a test. The test for Avram was that he already was promised a land. And he went through all these trials and tribulations. And now Sarah passes away, and Avram has nothing. And he has to go sit and argue with the people about buying the land, and he pays for it kesef moli. We spoke about that another time, full price. But you see over here two things. We see negotiation skills in business of what Avram had to do. On the one hand, the pasuk says that he told them, all these pasukim talk about how he negotiates buying the field, and he says, "Ger v'soishav anechi imachem," I am an alien and a resident among you. One of the things that Rashi says over here, which is just amazing, Medrash Agoda, the Medrash says that Avram said, "Im tirtzu, if you wish, hareini ger," I'll be an alien, which means that I don't really have rights to the land, so therefore I'll pay full price. And he's coming like he's begging them and finding favor in their eyes to please let me buy this property. But then he says, "V'im lav eyetoishiv v'etlenem radin shamali HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zaracha etin esharetz hazeh." And if not, so then I'm going to take it by force, because it's really rightfully mine, as Hashem said. But nevertheless, we see in the pasuk he pays full price, and then not only that, there's a pasuk where it says Vayishtachu Avram l'fnei ha'ma'aretz, that he bows down. In other words, he shows humility, etc., etc. In other words, dealing with a yid, the real way is meant to be win-win, win-win, because the other nation realizes that the Jews have spirituality, and the Jews are meant to be teachers, and the Jews are meant to be mentors, and the Jews are meant to be living role models of light and positivity. Even as the Rambam says that a goy learns Shem Mitzvei Noach. How does the goy learn Shem Mitzvei Noach? Because the Yid teaches the goy Shem Mitzvei Noach. Because this is what happened at Sinai. So this is the point. Then someone's going to come and ask, "Oh, yeah, the Jews, you're the chosen people. How racist could you get?" My friend, we don't see it as racist. Yes, we have a higher standard because we're a prince, we're royalty, call it what you want. But because of that, we serve everyone else. We have a life of service, and we don't think we're anything special at all. It's just that God chose us, and therefore we were given certain gifts, and therefore we have to work very hard in providing mankind with those gifts. I always say, for example, just to give a simple example, imagine you have two people that win the Nobel Prize in medicine. Let's say, theoretically. Just give me an example, a mashal. And one person gets up and says, "Yay, I won. Look what I mastered. Look how amazing I am." Then you have another person that gets up and says, "First, I want to thank all my colleagues. They deserve all the credit. They helped me do everything what I did to come to the conclusions that I came to. And second, I want to say, my friends, the way I feel right now is I'm completely humbled. I've glimpsed at the beauty of knowledge and the vast infinity in the world of knowledge. And I'm charged today. I feel that I have to work harder to discover more of the wisdom and the beauty of knowledge so that I could help mankind more." Could you imagine if we found a cure for this, for Alzheimer's, or we could find a cure for Yenemachel? I could almost guarantee you that this second scientist, this second sort of scenario, such a person would come to much more knowledge and truth in his life because of his humility. And he does have humility because he's glanced infinity. He's touched upon real greatness than himself, and therefore he's humble. And this is the way Yidden are meant to be. Kol hakorev korev yoser yoser kala. Because we were chosen, therefore we demand more of ourselves. If the world would see us as true role models of humility and how we're here to serve others, but we go with also Go'in Yaakov, the Jewish pride. Eretz Yisrael belongs to us because Hashem promised it to us. And morals were taught to us by Har Sinai, through Matan Torah. This is the way we have to speak. And therefore, my friends, this is the lesson in the times that we're going through with the war currently. The Eibusher said, "It should be the Dan Notzach on every single level." But for us, what this demands is that we should speak about Ata v'chatonu mikol ha'amim, ahavta isanu retzisa banu. We have to think about what does it mean to be a Yid. This week is the Kinnis HaShluchim, where all the emissaries of the Rebbe around the world get together and talk about how becoming galvanized, rejuvenated. And this is the point when we learn this week's parsha and we think about the idea that Sarah understood that sometimes you have to focus, we have to go inward, we have to talk about the standard, we have to make a border, the sanctuary should be strong, we have to fortify. Only when we fortify, we build from within, then we're powerful enough to face whatever adversary from without. The Eibusha should help that all the shluchim should come together and reach new heights in the service of Hashem, and the merit of the achdus of us all together. We should come to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, take it from a yad, mamish, posting from my home, your man, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.